Good morning, viewers. Thank you very much. Welcome to Punchline Africa Television, broadcasting from the Political Command Center somewhere in Africa. Thank you very much, all of you, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much for your patronage. This is Punchline Africa Television, bringing you a show, Global Matsanga Global Trends. In Matsanga's Global Trend, we are going to look at the trends, what is happening in terms of security in the world security, hot spots in the world, in Africa in particular. We shall look at Somalia, Libya, DRC Congo, Central African Republic, Chad, and Mozambique, and many other places. If you have any other area where you are, and Nigeria, which is a hotbed, plus South Sudan, that are beginning to show signs of unrest. Thank you very much, viewers. And then later on in the second part of our show, we shall look at the Cold War axis. The Cold War, is it a Cold War coming in here? Security and the Cold War syndrome that is coming when you hear of statements being made that China has taken over and we want to come in to take over China. Russia must not be accepted. People should not condemn Ukraine. If we find you trading with Russia, we shall blacklist you. These are some of the things that we want to look at on this show. This show is designed for the security agencies across Africa to hear what they might be having, but they might not have clues, especially in the question of the fighting terrorism, radicalization of the younger generation, that we want to educate, not to be radicalized into militants, to kill people, to bomb people, to slaughter people, to cut people. And also in this show, we also look at what has Africa done, what African governments are doing in terms of security. We see so many of them trying to improve security, but is it enough to deter terrorists, radicalization? What can we do to places? Can we use the Somalia method? The method where the citizens themselves have picked up their guns, picked up their pangas, picked up their sticks, and they're identifying Al-Shabaab, and they're chasing them away from their villages. What has changed the heart? But before we do that, I think it is very important and prudent for us to pay tribute to World Football Organization, FIFA, for having organized a very successful yet problematic tournament, which ended yesterday with one of my favorite team that I had supported, Argentina, winning. For those who were on the side of France, bad luck. Wait again for next 5 years. Is it 4 years? It is done every 4 years. You can wait and you'll get somewhere. Maybe your France will come again. For me, I have not had any sympathy with French-speaking countries, especially when it comes to them, first of all, losing their players. You make Africa poor. You make Africa not workable. You make conditions very difficult for Africa. Then recruit their players, pay them highly. But also, medium and at later stage, it is very, very important that we now also focus on very serious matters. We focus on a very serious issue. Is it the corruption that kills the African, football? Isn't it time for us to say the truth that corruption drives away people who could have come to get into African football? Most of our teams across Africa, all our organizations, football clubs, all of them seem to be in chaos. Some are being suspended, some are being, made redundant. Some are being charged of corruption. Is it corruption? One of the parents of one of the players from the French team said he wanted his son to play in the Cameroonian team, but he was asked for money before he plays in the Cameroonian team. And here we are. The man ended up being sold to France. But for people who want to know more about football, I refer you to the book of Nicolai Machiavelli. Again, the Prince. Miriam, you say you have a copy there. Look at the French, how the French treated the Argentina in those were in the wars of occupation. Nicolai Machiavelli said the Argentina people were drafted. The French drafted them in to fight as their draftsmen and trained them, and later on for them to become the masters of their own land. By Nicolai Machiavelli, the Prince, somewhere in the middle on one of the pages. I haven't got the page properly, but you will find that. You do that reference, the French and Argentina, it will bring you to the book, to the page, and then you will see what Nicolai Machiavelli talks about. The Argentina, the French army, the draftsmen. You see, the French don't fight in the war. They buy you to go and fight for them. In all their territories, they draft people to go and fight their war. Thank you very much. For football fans, I think now the temperature is going to go down. At least we shall have some sanity. Some people were leaving offices and going very early in the morning, very early, and they say, we are going for football. But now the football is not there anymore. Thank you very much. God bless you. Let's see. Let's get to the points, Miriam. And good morning, all of you. Good morning, Wanda. Thank you very much, my historian man. Thank you very much. And we are joined by my sister, Nazi Omar from London. Good morning, all of Nazi. How are you in London? It's very cold still, but you have volunteered to come out and speak on the subject of which touches your country. Thank you very much. I just want to say, Miriam, if there are any kickoff or kickstart, let's kickstart it. Let's talk about what is the security situation across the globe. What is it? Ukraine. Let's begin there. Let's begin in Somalia, back in Africa. What is going on the continent of Africa as far as the security situation is concerned in Somalia? Miriam.
All right, very well. Thank you so much, Doc, and a very good morning to you. So the latest from Somalia, the U.S. military has reported 2 new airstrikes against al-Shabaab fighters in Somalia's Hirshabelle state. In a statement, the U.S. military in Africa says it conducted 2 collective self-defense strikes against the group on December 14th and 17th. And meanwhile, the Somali military says the country's national army, with the help of local civilians, has conducted a planned military operation against the Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab in the Middle Shabelle region, killing at least 50 Al-Shabaab militants. A statement issued by Somali's National Army Commander on Saturday says the army's planned operation against the militants took place in the village of Darul Nishin in the country's Middle Shabelle region, and the village on the outskirts of the recently liberated strategic town of Adan Yabal, about 217 kilometers north of the capital Mogadishu, has seen an increase in military activity in the last 3 weeks. So that is just one case study. There's also other wins that the Somali government through its national army has had in its fight against Al-Shabaab. You're muted. Okay. All right, Doc.
Thank you, Miriam, at the studio. Thank you very much. Good morning. How are you? Thank you for the update. I don't know if headquarters can hear you.
Yes, we hear you, and I am sorry I had gone off. but Miriam had started it. It's okay. We just wanted Miriam to keep up with speed, and before Nazi Omar, she has the latest on the ground. Nazi Omar, we are looking at a new situation. Let me put questions to you. We are looking at the new question now as we speak, where nationals of Somalia themselves have picked up the guns, have picked up the sticks, and they have said they have had enough. They have been having a lot of promises from African Union. It means whatever force you call it, they have had enough. So they have picked up and they are going on for Al-Shabaab. Is it the right situation in that country right now?
To be quite honest, they have there's always glitches. There would always be some issues with any kind of conflict. They've gained a lot of grounds. The NSA, Somali National Army, with the local militias, they've gained a lot of grounds. They are moving this week as well to new territories. There's been a lot of territories that actually have not been nobody's been able to go into those territories, whether it's villages or town. But there's actually two places, a whole two regions that it's actually cleared of Al-Shabaab, completely cleared. As far as we know now, they've started to leaving the Artemis group after they move on to the next town or the next village. So they have to leave us some of the Somali national armies and some of Artemis troops together to keep safe the town or the village. But in most places, they're not going into a combat. They are running. Al-Shabaab is on the run now, and yes, it's that is what the latest is. And I think you've heard what the president has given an interview after the U.S. African summit, and that is a little bit worrying a lot of people on the ground, because for a while now those drones have not been there for a long time. Now, if he's easing the restrictions on the drones, there's a lot of people worried about the collateral damages to the nomadic people, to the nomads in Mogadishu and in the villages. And we don't know how is it going to go back to how it was. There was a lot of casualties. So that is the only worry that people have on the ground. But as far as Al-Shabaab is concerned, people are quite optimistic, and they hope to end it soon.
Oh, they hope to end it soon. That's very encouraging. I think does it now explain why Al-Shabaab has increased its attacks in the urban areas, urban centers like Mogadishu and the other areas, because they are being routed out in the villages?
Actually, yes. I think there is this Shabela that is somewhere not far from Mogadishu, and where most of the fertile lands of in this region was. I think now that is the next. That would be the next frontier. They have a little bit of stronghold there, but I think mostly they're putting their energy and their focus to get noticed in Mogadishu, because most two regions that they've occupied for the last 15 years, being town, either being villages, are clear. There's only two more strongholds of Al-Shabaab, and that is it. One already started, the military tactics started. I've had an interview with the general, one of the generals in Somalia, and he's given us a lot of good, feedback and a lot of positive energy coming from the villages. And he says the reason why he believes they are going to do this probably in the next 6 months. They would be done with Al-Shabaab, is because the villagers at the moment are the ones who are willing to call them out. And even if somebody hides himself, they call him out and they say, no, he's not among us. This one is Al-Shabaab. He's been with Al-Shabaab. So if you have the cooperation with the villages and the actual people, it would work. But before, there was no collaboration. People were scared of Al-Shabaab, thinking if the Somali National Army leaves, what are they going to do? These people are going to come back and attack their villages, and it's going to be business as usual. So nobody could call them out. But now people have the courage to call them out.
Thank you very much, Anna, for that, Nazi Omar. Thank you very much for that brief. But we come back to you on very important issue. The United Kingdom Court seem to be going to rule on whether the UK immigrants that were supposed to be shipped across the continent into Rwanda will be shipped or not. So we shall come back to you there. Rwanda, let me come back to you. Your position, your call on, is this a welcome decision by the Somalis themselves to take up the matter in their hands and start fighting in the villages, removing Al-Shabaab from the areas where they occupied? Do you consider it a welcome decision?
Thank you so much. I perceive it in 50-50. That one, it is very important that finally the people unite and flushes out those that have been terrorizing them and causing insecurity, which the insecurity has for so many years been hurting Somalia as a country. Now, and therefore, on one ground, I'm very happy that finally the people are mad, people are tired, and people want peace. The other 50 that I look at it as a sensitive end, we are arming people that are not trained to manage these firearms. So we will deal with Al-Shabaab, we will clear it, but now we'll be creating a state or a nation where so many people are holding guns, and if so many people are holding guns, and you have not trained them to hold guns, if these people decide to pick the insecurity lane, or if the economy hurts these people, or if these people are angry at each other, then the only weapons that they will use are these firearms that are more likely to cause harm to the nation in future. But insofar as dealing with Al-Shabaab is concerned, this is quite a welcomed move, that finally Al-Shabaab will not have air to breathe. And if they will not have air to breathe, then it means they will be suffocated, they will be flushed out, and finally the country will be free from Al-Shabaab and the dangers that Al-Shabaab has been posing on the nation. But the nation should equally be very careful that as they deal with Al-Shabaab, they should be looking at it with a keen interest that people are being armed, people are having firearms, and if this is not well taken care of, in future it might pose a threat, and especially when the economy will come calling, when social injustice will come calling, that these people will easily get into their homes, get out the firearms, then fight each other. But for Al-Shabaab, this is quite impressive.
Thank you very much, Wanda. But let me, before I come to Miriam, let me ask Nazi Omar, why did it take so long for a policy of this nature? Why is it that, you remember when the troops went into Somalia, Uganda suggested that we do what you are doing right now. The Ugandan government and the UPDF wanted to do door-to-door search, door-to-door, village to village. The AU came in and stopped. Do you think it was a very wrong approach by the AU to have stopped? the Somalis from taking up the order themselves in their hands? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was actually it would have been better. The Somali National Army was ready. They're the ones who is leading this fight. I don't know. Most people keep saying it's the militia groups who have been armed. There are no militia groups that have been armed. This is a three-tie fight against Al-Shabaab. One, that is the Somali National Army that is actually at the forefront. They're the ones who are doing the military operations and everything. Secondly, you've got the regional governments. And third, you've got the within the regional governments, and then you've got the people who live in those regional governments. Now, Somalis are nomads, and as we know, most of them had to be armed to protect themselves against Al-Shabaab, even though they failed in numerous villages. But then they've always had those weapons, with a few, but to protect themselves from Al-Shabaab. Now, what has changed? What has changed is the Somali National Army is only helping them and giving them ammunition and leading the fight. And they're the ones who can identify if there's anybody new who comes to the village after everybody runs away, whoever is left out, they're the ones who can say, no, this one is Al-Shabaab. He's not among us. He's been with Al-Shabaab for a long time. Because they're the ones who can oust Al-Shabaab among them. And I think it's a welcome move. But when it comes to ATMIS, I think now ATMIS, at the beginning of this fight, they've not been taking any role, but at the moment, I think they are helping some of the Somali National Army, and ATMIS, the liberated villages and towns is where they remain. So people do not need to flee the town, or people do not need to be worried that Al-Shabaab is going to come back.
Okay. As you stabilize your internet there from whatever from London, thank you very much, Nazi Omar. Stay on the line and stay on the line. Wanda, as we come back, we go to Miriam. Miriam, what's your view, general view, as we leave Somalia? Is it the best year, the end of year message, which is fantastic? To me, I think that is one of the messages that adds on Argentina as my end of year goodwill, because this year has been losses, lots of losses, lost so many other things. But this one is a good sign from Somalia. What do you think?
All right. Of course, Somalia conversation, we've been having it for a long time, from when President Farmajo was there. Now, this new administration, I think we have to give credit where it's due. And you can see there is political will, and there's a will by this administration to actually fight the Al-Shabaab and clear Al-Shabaab from Somalia. So you can see in their approach, you can see their relentlessness, you can see their dedication, their commitment to the fight against Al-Shabaab in Somalia. And I think from having this conversation and the information that Omar has just shared there, I think this goes to indicate the importance and indeed the strength as far as community policing is important, and the power of involving everybody, especially when you want to root out the issue of Al-Shabaab. We had that menace in this country, I think we still do, and the government had to make very controversial, hard steps. You remember when they went and they were clearing people who are in this country legally, because they were saying, for those who are in this country legally, you are here, you know this Al-Shabaab, you are shielding them, you're not telling us who they are. So unless you tell us and unless you're able to work with the government, then you will also suffer. And we saw the drastic, it was very controversial. But since then, we saw the attacks that were happening in this city stop. So sometimes you have to really make the bold step, as that conversation we normally have here, that show we normally have here, and that is the bold step that we're seeing the government of Somalia take. The importance of community policing, as Omar has explained there, it is the community, the people who know, who lives among them, who is the stranger that has visited us here and that was not here for the last month or so. Why are they here? So they are able to know among them. And it is important to involve. So I think this new administration, as much as there are some concerns about, the involvement of the militia group, because that is there, as much as there are individuals and people who are helping and aiding the government, but also there are some credible reports that, the government is working with these militia groups to try and the local militia to fight against this Al-Shabaab. But I think it is commendable and the steps, and also something that Omar has said that I think is quite important, that this fight is being led by the Somali National Army themselves. They're the ones taking the lead, and so everybody else is just supporting their efforts. I think this is very important because we know the mandate for ATMIS was to help in the transition and to empower the Somali National Army. So by the time they leave the country, which I think is the end of next year, the Somali National Army should be in a position to take care of the security of Somalia. So I think the fact that they're the ones who are in charge right now, they're taking the lead, that is a good sign that perhaps the Somali National Army is gaining momentum, is being strengthened. It's able to take care of its affairs. So by the time ATMIS is leaving, they will be fully in charge of the security apparatus in Somalia, which is something that it's quite a departure from what we saw from the previous government when it was not very clear. And that's why the mandate of what is that? I'm forgetting it, but it kept being renewed. So, but from what we're seeing right now, that it is
from
possible.
Amazon.
Yes, Amazon, thank you. Then it is possible to craft an exit if, the Somali National Army is in charge. So I think as much as there's still some other challenges, but we have to commend the progress that is being made and the will that this new administration has in its fight against, Al-Shabaab. So I think for me, my appeal will be for other stakeholders to continue supporting these efforts, because I think in the long run, we might see finally a stable Somalia where, they can go back to the path of, rebuilding and, their country.
Thank you, Miriam. If we could just pick up from where one word or two before we give it back to the headquarters. There's a few things that you've said that I want to pick up on. Remember, the previous regime was not less, it does not mean they did not have the effort and the willingness of fighting the Al-Shabaabs. It was, the Somali National Army was. At the same time, having more trained, but they were also trying to fight the Al-Shabaab. But the problem was people were still too afraid that as soon as they get liberated and Al-Shabaab comes back to the village. So it might have been that the previous regime's movement was not as robust as this. But the reason that it's robust at the moment is because it started with the Hiran region. Hiran region has decided we've had enough is enough. Even though this was part of the current president, Hassan Sheikh, but he had to jump on the bandwagon, if I may use that terminology, which is very bad. Because the Hiran region had buses, the kids being put on light, women were killed, their wells being poisoned. So there's actually his Jate, a mayor of the Hiran region by the name Jate, started the fight against, they continued fighting Al-Shabaab. And I think the current government had to support it, but it wasn't timely for the government. But I think if they had started this fight against Al-Shabaab, according to their timelines, according to what they planned, I think by now, it would have been, probably we would have been seeing more regions more than 2 regions already liberated. That is all I wanted to add to. But it does not mean the previous regime did not work on that. They did. They prepared all the grants. They prepared the militaries. They've been doing that. They've been engaging with the villages, trying to win their support. And I think now the groundwork had been done, and I think that is what is making it so amazing and so easy. And a lot of Somalis have a lot of hope that it's only now 2 regions and maybe 6 months or less. We hope that would have no more Al-Shabaab. But I don't know how it's going to be in Mogadishu, because as soon as they're ousted in the villages, we end up having issues in Mogadishu. There is that piece that we need to put together. Thank you very much, Miriam, at the studio. Back to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. But there is something that I want to add there, Miriam and Omar and Wanda. Perhaps one of the things that has delayed a total liberation and the total implementation of this policy was the double agency, double spies, infiltration of the Somali army and the Somali intelligence by external forces. Some of the forces, Omar, you have been very, very vocal in saying some of the ministry, some of the people who left the bush came and infiltrated the national army and national intelligence, and therefore giving information in both ways. So it was very easy for Al-Shabaab at that time. But the new administration and the new directorship of the intelligence, Somali intelligence, national intelligence, seem to be very solid in that penetration has been very minimal. And therefore, they are easy. Their information is intact, and the people are willing now to show, because there is protection also. And the point you made, which is very clear point here right now, is the point of protection from attacks. If you go on the report, where do you go? Now, today the army is moving along with civilians. Because the army is leading the attack, you can get protection from the army. But previously, if you were attacked, you will be on your own, and then you'll be left in the village. That is very, very encouraging. And that is a very good news from Somalia as we end this year. And this is one of our last programs on this issue this year. Next week, we shall not be broadcasting on the same. We shall be doing some other things, and it will be Christmas time. Thank you very much, Omar. And let's move on to... Yes.
If I may just correct you, sir, I say the failure. It's not that before there was a penetration within the security. What I said is, with this administration, the Somali National Army is actually doing quite a lot. They've liberated a lot. But the problem we are having, and the leak of the security we are having, is when it comes to Mogadishu. That is where the problem is with these villages. And last time we saw that Villa Rosa was infiltrated, and it lasted for a few hours. So in that sense, the security and the intelligence, there is a leak within the intelligence issue and with the intelligence. But it's not before, it's now. If the proximity is that close to Villa Rose, and the Al-Shabaab fight is being enticed outside Mogadishu in the villages, this is our worry. Would we see another Villa Rose? Has the security level, the alert security level in Mogadishu, has it been changed? Has it been put a notch up? And that is the only thing, because we still haven't got any answers as to what failed and what happened. And we're still waiting for answers in regards to the Somali security intelligence, to give us a report on how did these people get so close to Villa Somalia and being engaged in fight at Villa Rose for all those hours. Thank you.
right. Doc?
Back to you there at the headquarters.
Oh, thank you very much. I had switched off these buttons. Our second country that we want to look at as far as security is concerned is Libya. You notice that Miriam, Omar, and Wanda, all of us went to United States of America, but nobody mentioned Libya. Looked like people have forgotten all about Libya. Nobody mentioned Libya in all this communique. Each African leader is on his own, is fetching goods, money for their own countries, yet Libya stood up for Africa. What do you think is going on here? Why is it that Libya has been put on the back files? Is it the oil that is being pumped illegally out of Libya without notification of the Libyan government? Is it because the absence of a government, a central government, centralized to supervise the oil that France and other countries are taking out of Libya, that people did not want to mention anything to do with Libya? What do you think? What is your view on this? Let me start with Wanda.
Thank you so much. The insecurity in Libya is something that African Union and African leaders need now to be very serious about it, because Libya was once a peaceful nation, was once a country that was growing and doing well. But with the invention of NATO, the killing of Gaddafi, Libya turned out to be a battleground. That nowadays insecurity in Libya, in fact, I was reading a certain report on the UNSC, that insecurity in Libya is now something of, it is a common thing, of which when you look at the insecurity in Libya, because the country was destroyed purposefully based on their natural riches, in this case, the oil. Because at times you'll tend to wonder who is this person that is taking the oil that was once feeding the nation and growing the, the economy of the nation. That the country that was very stable, whose oil was growing the nation and doing almost everything, when insecurity hit the nation, when they lost the leadership of the nation, then the country is nowhere to be seen and nobody is talking about it. Therefore, to me, I feel like the reason why nobody is talking about Libya and the insecurity in Libya is because whoever crafted whoever made Libya to be insecure, whoever destroyed Libya, they are the very persons who who amplifies the information that goes out there. They're the propagandists of this world. Therefore, nobody is talking about Libya because whoever destroyed Libya is the one who is the engineer of propaganda or the one who engineers the news that spreads out there. Therefore, they are not talking about it because they are still feeding from Libya. They're still siphoning everything from, in this case, oil from Libya. Therefore, it's only the responsibility of African leaders, the regional economic groupings, the ECOWAS, the SADC, and all these regions, to come to a realization that we have a country that we are leaving behind, that this country was all okay, but we allowed, from our own mistakes, we allowed the invasion of Libya because at first we were told, or it was believed that if NATO was coming in probably to end the madness that was there and probably uplift the nation, but it wasn't the case. Therefore, the African leadership have to come to a realization that a brother is being left behind. And because the engineers were not people from Africa, and these are persons who are always very interested in anything to do with the oil, then this high appetite of oil and the country having the oil, it will be, chances of Libya being talked about by the outside world is almost equal to zero. And Africans have a tendency of forgetting about their own brothers, forgetting about their own sisters. And therefore, it should probably such platforms now should start talking about Libya, amplify the message of Libya. Chances are it might get to some people's heads then they'll realize that there is a country you are leaving behind, then it can be talked about. Because you look at African Union, it will not talk, it's not talking about Libya. You look at the regional groupings, they're not talking about Libya. And therefore, it is a case of everyone for themselves and God for us all. Therefore, such platforms should now come in and help amplify the message of insecurity in Libya. And in so doing, the rest of the world, the rest of the region, and AU will feel ashamed of not talking about Libya. Then chances are they may start talking about it. Like when Dr. Matsanga and the rest started amplifying the message of Ethiopia, started amplifying the message of DRC Congo, AU felt ashamed, then in one way or the other, behaved like now a group who wants to listen, a group who wants to address the issue. But because nobody is talking about Libya, AU and the regional grouping and the rest of the world are not talking about it. But if we sit and expect the rest of the world to talk about Libya, then we'll be missing a point, because they are the ones who crafted insecurity in Libya. And they crafted it probably for the case of siphoning the oil that is there. And therefore, it is our own responsibility to talk about Libya, amplify the message of Libia. Then AU will feel ashamed of not working. Then chances are they will now work.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wanda. The same to Omar. You think there's anybody who cares? Nobody heard about Libya. The whole United States of America Conference, Africa Summit, no leader raised the question of Libyan insecurity. And yet, it is insecurity in Africa that is leading to poverty. Yet, it is insecurity in Africa that is leading to disease. Yet, it is security in Africa that is leading to ignorance. People can't go to school. Tell me children in Somalia have been going to school. Tell me children in South Sudan, have they been going to school? Tell me the poverty rates. We plan all the money into arms and we don't build hospitals, schools, roads. Poverty comes, strikes us. And what does poverty lead to? Insecurity, conflict. Because poor people are very difficult to manage. And equally, rich people, if they are few, it's very easy to create a conflict. Omar.
Yes, thank you, sir. It was actually very sad that the U.S. African Summit, there was no leader who mentioned the ones who went. At least we had few who sent representations, but the ones who went, it was sad that nobody remembered Libya. And besides the instability in Libya, I would also like to see the AU talk about the money that was outside Libya, that was held in bank reserves. That money could go a long way for the Libyans, and towards stabilizing, towards helping the Libyans, and so on and so forth, and rebuilding Libya. I'm not sure about the proxy war in regards to the oil, that I can dig into that, but at least I think this is a beginning, a starting point. The reserved money that were in the banks for Libya, to at least help Libyans build back their lives and their futures, schools, roads, infrastructures, etc. Back to studio.
Thank you very much, Omar. Perhaps you did not want to go into the proxy of oil, but it is oil that has actually made Libya not to be talked about. Someone is siphoning the oil for free and is taking it for free. The report of United Nations said illegal oil was being pumped into very many of French trawlers, ships that were anchored in the ports around the Mediterranean Sea. Plenty of it is being taken out.
Yes. Yes, and this is the reason why we actually need to be banging the drums about the AU, the African Union, and the blocs and the SADCs and all that. They are not working for the Africans. They whatever situation is, the situation has to be changed within. It has to start with those organizations, and without them, we cannot get to the root cause. The root cause could be there, but the arms that are supposed to rotate and change and stand for Africa and speak for Africa, those.
Yes. We lost you there.
Sorry about that. Those wheels are not turning in the right direction. That is the SADCs and the African Union and so on and so forth. So if those wheels turn in the right direction, then we would have a way forward. And I think that is the problem. Those wheels are on a standstill. It's not functioning for Africa. It's not working for Africa. It's not representing Africa. It's not dealing with African issue. And that is where we are failing as African. Back to studio.
Yeah, thank you very much. Exactly. AU is one of the topics that I and Miriam and I have been hammering for the last 3 years, but it doesn't change. The problem with us Africans is we stand for nothing and fall for everything. Can I repeat that? We stand for nothing, our leaders stand for nothing, and they fall for everything, which is going to be our next topic. Did we fall for everything and then we stand for nothing, Miriam? But before we go that, let's look at, we have, Miriam, we have AU. Tell me, we created the Organization of African Unity or African Unity, Union. Okay, what is the use of African Union? Isn't it African Union to represent the African states? Why do we ourselves pick up bags and go with our person we have sent to represent us, sit in the same, have the same status, yet this man is your employee? The chairperson of African Union is a clerk, is a small clerical officer of African heads of state, of African countries. You can't promote this guy to a level of a head of state, standing in front of other presidents who have invited you. He's a clerical officer who should actually be carrying your files and reading your minutes. And that is how African Union lost the value, the vision. Mr. Muhammad Faki is a clerical officer. He is not above a head of state of Africa. But the problem that we make, we even kneel before him. A whole president who has been selected by 50 million people, 80 million people like Buhari, would like to bow before the African Union Secretary, chairperson. No! The African Union chairperson is a secretariat. He's your minute recorder. So why do you carry your clerical officer to go and stand with you on the same line with President Biden? I think African leaders have. On this one, I don't know whether Omar and Miriam, are you seeing what I'm seeing here? And I wonder, are you seeing what I'm seeing here? That's the problem. Yes. Yes.
I actually agree with you. He should not be the person who is at the forefront. For me, actually, period. The African leaders should not even be there to begin with. As simple as that. When we look at 55 billion and in 3 years, I think China has invested that in more than that, triple that in just the last 1 year in Africa. Besides that, they've all been there and they're all gone to the US African summit, and then putting somebody like the African Union ahead to be in front of them, who is a total failure and a total failure administration, or not administration, but a department, or whatever it is. I don't even know what to call it anymore, because I don't see whatever work they're doing. I don't see anything tangible that Mr. Faki has done that I could say, yes, I am proud of this. He has failed in many things, but Mr. Faki has managed to make a success story here. So it is very sad. He should be behind on the queue, not at the front of the queue. Thank you. Not that any of them should queue either.
Not that any of them should queue either. I think all of them were queuing there. I have my pride, but I think if I become a head of state of this country, you'll have to come to my place. I'll increase the visa fee. For example, if I become a president of Uganda one day, God gives me a chance, for you to come to see my gorillas in Mount Rwenzori, you'll have to pay $5,000 per visa. $5,000 per piece, a visa. I'm not, you know what? I'm not, honestly, let me ask you, why do we give this? Even there are some people who even exempt these guys to come here and see our sunshine. God gave us this continent. I don't want to speak like a Dr. Arikana. God gave us this continent. Why is it that God also selected this continent to have sunshine? Two types of climate. Why? The weather. The cold weather is not here. The cold weather comes mild with cold, not winter. So for me, if I am a head of state, I would charge £1,000 for a visa, or $5,000 if you want to come to Uganda to visit. Yes, you go to South Africa where you can see cheaply, because there are no Mount gorillas in South Africa. Where do you get them? You see, you have seen Europe. When you arrive in the UK, they show you the museum full of all. Am I wrong, Nazi Omar? Do you know how much you pay to enter that museum? It's plenty of money. To enter the museum in London is about 12 pounds. I think it has gone to 25 pounds per person. How much, just Miriam, tell me how much money these guys collect. And in the museum, you find the old stove, the first electric lamp. You know, you are looking like this. Eh? For us here, we bring our people and show. Your museum is where? Is on Museum Hero, I'm told, in Nairobi. Yes, you allow everybody. In fact, at times, some of them go there. Some of them go there free. Wonder, have you ever been charged going to the museum here in Nairobi? Do you see that the tourists just come and enjoy? The only place where I see people pay some money is the park. There is the animal park somewhere there, isn't it? But the amount is compared to the amount that you pay in New York if you want to see George Washington museum where he was kept. You want to see Abraham Lincoln. It's a lot of money. So for me, the first thing that I would like to make as a rule is to hike the amount of visa application. Yes. 2, if you put sanctions on people here, we could also put sanctions. I also look for Joe Biden's son and put sanctions. That's, yes, that whenever you see him near our territory, you should not step there. We shall see who will cry more. Because it is one-way traffic now here. You have nothing, you make a small mistake, they put sanctions on you.
That is the problem at the headquarters and Miriam at the studio. The problem is Africans do not believe that we are the wheels that we're the wheels that generates the Western economy. If we close the taps, the Western economy will collapse. Close the taps, and the economies collapse. And that is what I'm saying. Unless we as Africans start believing that we are the ones who are frontiering and we are the ones who are making those Western economy develop and make the wheels turn, we're not going to get anywhere. We'll get sanctions. But then if we close our taps, as simple as saying we're not trading with you in this section, we don't even need to put any sanctions. Only that will give them the realization. But then does Africa have that guts? Do we have that vision? Do we have the guts to do that? Back to you, headquarters in the studio. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is Libya for you. Miriam, any comment on Libya before we switch on to another topic?
Yeah, I picked a few things that have been submitted already. Perhaps why the African leadership could not bring up the issue of Libya in the U.S. Why would they? And why would the U.S. entertain that? Because the U.S. is part of the countries that engineered the downfall of Libya. And so the same thing, Doc, I think when we were talking about, how they distracted Syria and, when we're looking at the English Channel and the immigrants who are trying to move from France to access the UK, they went and they disrupted the peace in Syria. That is the same thing they did in Libya, and they brought Libya to its knees. And nowadays you don't hear them talk about it. And I think they've had the same influence in the African Union. So we don't see conversations about Libya taking precedence. And it's quite complex. And as Doctor, you've rightfully put it there, it has to do with oil. It has to do with oil. Libya was the biggest, that is the biggest market where Italy was getting its oil. So there are complexities, and we've seen the balance of power also play. If Turkey is supporting one side, then Russia is supporting the other side. If the US is supporting, and we've seen how that has played out, and it's a very complex situation, internal dynamics, international actors, and all of these people, especially the international actors, they just seen an opportunity to advance their own narrow self-interest at the detriment of Libya. So it is one of very sad cases of a country that was very stable in this continent, but because of perhaps the ideologies that the former president stood out for and wanted, maybe he did not speak about them in the most, formal or whatever way that perhaps resonated with the people from the West. But nevertheless, look at what they've done to Libya. And now Libya is a country that I don't know. I don't know what will happen there. But nobody's interested to have that conversation. And it is sad that that conversation is not even had in African Union itself because of the influence of these actors that destroyed Libya. So it's just one of those sad cases in this continent.
Oh, thank you very much for lauding that position. And thank you very much, Miriam. The rest of the questions, I think we shall leave some of them for tomorrow. Like I wanted to bring Omar. We have DRC, Central African Republic. The pattern is almost the same. And DRC, I think the quickest we can say that is the ceasefire holding. I don't think the ceasefire is holding. Any news of the ceasefire in the DRC, Miriam?
It's not holding, and M23 has been consistent in accusing the Rwanda's army in violating the ceasefire, not the Rwandan army, the Democratic Republic of Congo's army, of violating the ceasefire. And when it does, the government of DRC does not say anything. So if you are being accused and you're quiet, then the assumption is there is a possibility whatever the M23 is saying is true. So as much as the world has been focused on holding M23 accountable, I think from what Omar said the last time we were having this conversation, we need to interrogate the position of the Democratic Republic of Congo's government and what are their contribution to this conflict, and is there a will in that country to actually end this conflict? I think that is the question that we have to grapple with right now.
I think, Omar, while you are away, thank you very much, Miriam, for raising that. Your point came out very clear. You were right. Something is wrong with the Democratic Republic of Congo government. Itself finds itself on a security tenterhooks because it also has, when it came to Washington, D.C., it disappeared from all meetings. It didn't want to take part in any of the meetings. Is it the guilt that is making it not appear in some of those meetings?
Accountability.
Accountability and the guilt.
Running away.
Omar?
Yeah, so for me, I don't know, why would they appear in the first place? I did not expect them to actually march and go to Congo. Was that to make a statement that yes, we have been, I did not expect Congo to join the African US summit. But then once they've been there, was it a statement for them? Was it to make a statement that, yes, we have arrived and we are here? Boohoo, maybe it's a virtual signaling some of the African countries and the Western countries, and at the same time not participating in any meaningful way during the summit. So whether it was a virtual signaling, whether it's to show, yes, we are around, we are here, I'm not sure.
Thank you very much. They didn't want to appear because they would be accountable for the rebels that they also sponsor.
It's running away from accountability.
A straightforward answer, Omar. They have rebels that they also pay to destabilize some countries. Okay, if you, can somebody on this platform tell me what is the chain of supply of copper? Who supplies copper? Is you people on this platform, didn't you hear that Chinese bought the dollar copper mines of Zambia?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes.
Didn't you hear that? Now,
yes.
The United States of America comes to sign a contract that their copper, the copper from Zambia and all diamonds and minerals and gold and everything from southern Congo in Lubumbashi. You know the Lubumbashi capital, the southern capital of diamonds in the Katanga region and so on. All of this, we shall be the one in charge. Are you not bringing a Cold War in Africa? That is the topic that we are on right now. Thank you very much. I wanted to bring you to that attention. Ladies and gentlemen, the summit in the United States of America has divided Africa. Those who say Africans heads of state should have not gone there are many. And there are those who say they have to go and tell them. But there are very few of them who question why the summit. Some of us have questioned the summit, the timing of the summit. Was it the timing that was worse? Was it the outcome that was worse? Was it the presence of African heads of state together with their clerical officer called Dr. Muhammad Faki, the Secretary General of African Union, the chairperson of African Union, who is not on the status of a president of Africa? Does he take himself as a president of Africa? that he stands there in front of this whole world as though he was the president of Africa. He's not elected like the people that were called in the White House. So what is the game plan on this? Let's go into it. Miriam, what do you think is the game plan? The Russians, the Chinese have come to Africa. They are beginning to gain ground in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and even in Kenya, even in Somalia, they are there. Russians are there. Chinese are in Zimbabwe. Chinese are in Mozambique. They are in Tanzania doing all sorts of projects. Isn't it time for us to be good enough to say, what do we envisage out of this? Don't you see a war? Don't you see a Cold War coming in? What is your view? Let's start.
There is talk, and I think this could be looked at as the second scramble for Africa. And when you look at how the power plays are playing in this continent, the summit that happened in the US, of course, the underlying factor and the unspoken factor was China, and this was done in an effort to try to mitigate China's influence in the continent. I don't know if the US will be able to succeed in this, and what the message that President Joe Biden was trying to drive home was that China is burdening Africa with debt, what they refer to as a debt trap, when in fact, according to a July 2022 report by Debt Justice, a UK charity working to end poverty caused by unjust debt, African governments owe 3 times more to the Western banks, not the Chinese banks, the Western banks, asset managers and oil traders than to China, and we are normally charged double the interest by the Western banks compared to what we get from China. So all these debt traps that the Western countries are trying to tell us that China is enslaving us with, or might enslave us with, actually it is the opposite. It is the Western bank. But having said that, I think Africa has to wake up, and we have to realize, why is it that everybody is interested in this continent? What do we have, and what is the interest? And unfortunately, we don't have a leadership in this continent that can see through the lies, can see through this interest that are advancing their way into the continent, or are already having a footing in the continent, because it has nothing to do with our own good. It has nothing to do with development for our countries. It has nothing to do with the interest of the people in this continent. These are power plays at hand. These are people who are advancing their own foreign policies. These are people who are acting in the interest of their own countries. So Russia is advancing its ways. The US is trying to counter that. China is already doing so much in this continent, and we will feel indebted. And when somebody has invested so much in your own country, it takes away part of your right. It takes away part of your voice. So Africa has to wake up, because we have, at the end of it all, we have nothing to gain from what is happening. Our gain there will be so minimal, and we stand to lose so much as a people of this continent, because they are only advancing their own interests at the end of the day.
Thank you very much. It is their own interest. It is us to lose. And it looks like we shall stand at a war, a cold war, that when you are seen talking to the Russian Prime Minister or Foreign Minister who has visited your country, you are embargoed. You are put on sanctions. Wonder, have we already arrived at the Cold War competition? How do you feel those Chinese investors who went and bought a copper mine in Dola, in Katwe, in Zambia, and made it profitable? And now you sign an agreement with the Americans to say we shall, all supply lines, supply chain will be handed over to Americans. What do you think? Isn't it a Cold War?
It is, because you can never serve 2 masters at a go. You either serve one and ignore the other one, but you simply can never serve 2 masters at the same time. What happened is equal to serving 2 masters at the same time. Now, when I equally still look at China and the statement that has just been uttered or mentioned some few minutes ago, that Africa is the source of the world riches. China was never rich the way it is today until when it discovered Africa and the riches that Africa has. The rest of the world have now realized, the Western world has now come to a realization that China is growing at a very high speed because it has realized it has finally gotten to a realization that our riches comes from this end. Now, what we are facing today is equal to what happened during the Vietnamese War, the Cold War. Now, this one is a bit different because we are now directly negotiating. Negotiating with these guys, and China is already now owning some mines in DRC Congo. That our leadership is directly getting involved in this, and in fact, the worst enemy of Africa is not even the disease, the ignorance, the civil wars. The worst enemy of Africa are African leaders. That African leaders could probably knows the dangers that they are posing the nation or the continent into, but they care less. They still goes ahead and get into such kind of agreements, get into a point of selling some sections of the country at the expense of our people. And even if they go ahead and sell some of these mines, the direct persons that owns the nation don't feel the impact of what was sold. And therefore, even if China went ahead and bought some of these mines, how comes the monies never came in to help our people or the people at DRC Congo? Mm-hmm. Therefore, we are in this for a Cold War. That the kind of negotiations we are getting involved in, it is a case of playing or scamming one person or one party, or probably scamming both parts. There were both parties. That China will feel like, hey, why did you sell to us? Why did you get into this kind of argument with us? Then you're going ahead to invite the Western world, to invite USA, to invite China and the rest of the world. Therefore, we are not doing it well. And our leaders are the worst, very worst enemies that we are having, because they are not discharging their responsibilities. They are not doing what they're supposed to do. And in this time round, they are entering very sensitive treaties that stands a chance to ruin the continent to the levels that no one can ever imagine. Because China is not going to get it easily. They are not going to absorb it easily. The Western world are not going to absorb what probably the leadership will again get into Russia and China and get into terms with. And therefore, we are fronting ourselves in a very awkward situation where we will directly be involved in this.
In the corner.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In the corner. Thank you very much. And look, east or west, whatever you want to say, Wanda, you have hit the point that, like it or not, and Miriam said it, and I've said it on this platform, China brought its money. It comes with its cash and puts it on the table. Even they buy their own cement. You know, have you ever seen any Chinese complaining that his money was stolen? Since they started constructing all those roads of yours, the flyovers in Kenya. Have you ever heard of that? No. The point here is they have discipline, morality. But the money that is sent on LOC, the last you are going to see some of the heads of state of Africa talking about the summit in Washington was the last that you saw on TV. But when they come back now, everybody has gone quiet. And they will go quiet. Nobody is going to explain to his nationals how much money was got and if for what, who sent you to get the money. People fear because questions are being asked. Why should you have AU and then go with AU, yet AU should take your words as a unified stand? That's why divide and rule tactics of the Americans always, they don't take us seriously. They don't look at us as key players. They look at us as jokers who are coming. You can parade them here and I say, this is what I want you to do. I want you to do this. I want you to do this. I'll give you $10 billion. Hello? Come on, Africa. Thank you very much. I think, unless there's something else, Miriam,
No.
we end there. But I can do a takeaway for this show. Should I?
Mm-hmm.
You have anything else?
No.
Wanda, do you have anything? Your parting shot?
My parting shot will be one. When we look at Libya and Libya hurting, and the United Nations Development Program writes a report, and this report gets to United Nations Security Council, who in 1973, in their resolution, ended up allowing NATO invade Libya in 2011 on a case of ceasefire. So when such reports that UNDP writes that shows that we still have the civil wars, that we still have the arms in Libya, does United Nations Security Council go through them and come to a realization that the 1973 resolution in Libya was not okay and they now have to act and put Libya in order? I end.
That's the question you have asked today. I don't think I don't think Wanda, they don't think about it at all. But given as it is, let's do a takeaway. Africa still needs us. Our voices are important. Platforms of this nature are the ones that can alert some people of so many things. And thank you very much, all of you, but let me do a takeaway. Last week, we saw quite a lot of activities in Africa and on the continent of Africa and the United States. The journey between Africa and the United States takes hours, almost 11 hours, depending on which country you are from. Many heads of state who accepted the invitation and took the invitation of President Joe Biden arrived in Washington, D.C. Many were involved in quite a number of activities, talking about health, investment, businesses, economy, politics, governance. But one thing that came out of this summit is the summit was called as a knee-jerk action against the Czechs, against Russia and China. In the statement that were seen by the Secretary of Defense for United States, where he says China and Russia are destabilizing Africa, does it therefore mean that he also wants to come in to stop the destabilization of Africa, or continue also with the same game so that they are at par? It is sad, therefore, for Africa to sit and watch and listen to the same people who have come to and brought those conflicts on our continent. Remember, Africa, for every war fought on the African continent, there must be a funder, there must be a manufacturer of guns, there must be a supply of guns, there must be what we call people's gain from the perspective of Western Hemisphere. Is Africa being prepared for a Cold War axis? The answer is yes. If you look at the agreements that have been signed, namely the agreements between Zambia, DRC Congo, and other countries that have signed agreement of airspace, is it thinkable that today an African country would sign an agreement to go to the airspace when he has not cleaned the earth space? The space economy that Rwanda and Nigeria signed to, what does it help us? Surely the earth, on earth, the people, the citizens lack quite a number of things. They are dying of diseases that could be cured. Is there anything that we can gain from such projects like the space? Are we not bringing more of division, scramble for Africa, as our show has shown? Is Africa on the road for scrambling, or is it being scrambled? Is Africa a new frontier of a Cold War between the West and the East? How long shall we be part of the path of wars that are not our wars, but wars manufactured from outside and brought in for us to receive casualties, hospitals, bomb our buildings, kill our people? When and at what time shall we say enough is enough? Thank you very much, viewers. This has been Matsanga Global Trends, bringing you live from Punchline Africa TV. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, the panel. Thank you.